what's the kind of change that we're really trying to introduce in the space? I mean, as it was rightly put in the previous session, let's not embark upon something too complex that it'll likely end up making life more difficult for the end user. There's a process to this journey. Of course, we all like to embrace chaos, new stuff, changes, etc. But then there's a rather simple approach to solving many of this. I do remember, the session from last afternoon. Some of you said I missed out the demo session that was going on the sidelines over there. But from those who attended that particular session, I did notice something. Now, what's it something? As I was going through this presentation of that kiosk, on which I was really not trained at, I somehow figured out a way to make all of this work. I noticed something. Okay, Ashok, you're showing all this GenAI stuff, Merlin School, but this makes so much sense. So why is it that we haven't had this for such a long time? So that's where we start to tackle and attack the problem, right? So what's the experience like for a day-to-day procurement professional or a user who's trying to buy goods and services for the enterprise? We're trying to bring all that experience to an application or a product or a tool set that no one pretty much needs any training at. So we are introducing the Zycus Merlin S2P Suite experience on Microsoft Teams. That's why we have Merlin Assist. Now, what does it really do? It can pretty much do most things that you want to do on a day-to-day basis as you interact and collaborate with your procurement desk, right? Starting with, hey, I want to create a new requisition. I want to track a particular purchase order or an invoice, right? I want to approve a particular contract, right? I want to send a quick note or a message to a supplier. Now think about how long this is taking for you today without this level of interactability and user intuitiveness, right? That's the very first simple problem we are solving through this. Now, I've preloaded some of these examples. When somebody is requesting an approval on a particular document, the conventional method is, okay, there's an email notification, there's a calendar notification, etc. But here, you will get the notification through Microsoft Teams at your fingertips, and you can go ahead and review the details of the requisition or the PO or the invoice, click approve, move on to the next thing, right? If you want to put an order in place for a catalog item, I think I went too far up. You can simply type it away, and then it'll then take you to the Zycus checkout window. The Zycus system pretty much automates, the cost center capture and all the critical details that goes into a requisition or a PO, that it saves you a tremendous amount of time. So essentially, we've cut short the length that you have to travel between what you want to have and you're actually placing an order for. Everything is shrunken down to this entry through Merlin Assist. Now, what can it do beyond a lot of the school stuff, purchasing experience? Now, upon talking and interacting with a lot of customers, we're being informed, look, we're in a very dynamic environment. A lot of unpredictable stuff happening on a macroeconomic basis, geopolitical stuff that also impacts the way we procure goods and services. There is constant updates to our procurement policy, who needs to approve what, which country you're allowed to buy from. Several of the suppliers that you've always done transactions with are now sanctioned. How do we ensure that we're able to comply with all these changing dynamics, right? And yet adopt, procurement pathways that are extremely easy for thousands of employees within the organization to go through. So what we've done is generative AI. We're able to allow customers to go ahead and maintain the procurement policy document, anything that you have on a day-to-day basis, simply upload that into the tool, and it'll automatically map your procurement policy directly, and which is what will then guide the end user to go ahead and kickstart the procure purchasing channels through Merlin Assist. I recorded a quick clip that I'll play here for you on what is that we're really trying to do with something like guided intake using generative AI or generative artificial intelligence. Bear with me here for a second. So essentially, let's try and assume a scenario such as the one we are at. Our marketing team always gives us printed t-shirts with Zycus logo on it, right? For the conference here in Miami or the one we had in Arizona a couple of years ago. So if somebody from the procurement administration is tasked with sourcing and purchasing these t-shirts, but they're new in the organization, imagine the number of people that they need to talk to figure out how they can spend about $10,000, $15,000 to get printed t-shirts delivered to both our customers and Zycus employees who will be part of the conference, right? Now, we are reducing that probing and query and information gathering mechanism to simply down to a question through Microsoft Teams SS. Simply ask what you want, right? Not to 10 different people. You don't have to read a 50-page procurement policy document to do that. Simply type that, and then Zycus S2P's Merlin Suite will figure out, based on its interpretation of the question that's entered, and come up with the most relevant, policy adherent, and compliant next step. It'll tell you, hey, this seems to be a category or a purchase of this kind. I would like to know how much is the approved budget as a next logical step, potentially, right? Now, it's quite possible that you already have, as an organization, contracted vendors for that category in any given geography, in which case that will be presented to the user. Simply order this, your job is done. If not, it'll ask additional relevant follow-through questions. In this case, hey, I have about $8,000 to spend, and then the system will respond with what the next logical step is. Hey, it looks like for this, your request is getting processed. We simply need to go ahead and put a purchase requisition in place out there for a service requisition. Job done. Now, the items or the services are directly added to the cart or a purchase request form that's represented to the end user on Microsoft Teams. Nobody needs to be trained on a new purchasing tool. It's all done here. Add it to the cart, and out goes the purchase requisition. It'll get approved. Now let's take a slightly different, a little bit more complicated use case. Hey, once again, Merlin, guide me. I'm new in this organization, but I'm looking for, let's say we just moved to a new building, right? There are about 1,000 employees who now are occupying Miami, our downtown Miami office. How dreamy would that be, right? But then I'm looking for a facilities maintenance contractor, right? How do I go about it? Again, the sequence of steps, is very similar to what I explained there. In this particular example, hey, it identifies the category and asks the next question, how much is the dollar amount, right? And assuming here somebody enters, hey, I have about $150,000 to spend over the next 5 years for maintaining my office spaces. How do I go about it? And the system, based on whatever your procurement policy was, remember, you uploaded that into the Merlin AI engine that generates and accordingly comes back with relevant next course of action. Hey, it looks like you don't have a contracted vendor for this category today, right? For this particular region. And especially given the fact that you're going to have to spend this much, it needs to go through a process of 3 bid and a buy. Now, this 3 bid and a buy task could be a self-service initiative where Merlin went ahead and discovered all local vendors in that area who could be doing facilities management, right? So within seconds, you're now able to take those suppliers who has been discovered by artificial intelligence, right? Kind of like doing a Yelp search, yet here it's a little bit more professional grade, compliant as per your policy criteria, and then you kickstart what you call as advanced quick sourcing, which is a sourcing bid. You receive the bids, and then you cut an order or contract with that supplier, and so on and so forth. So this could essentially cut down the travel time you take from the point of thinking what's that you want and ultimately doing the purchase order, everything is down to few minutes, if not seconds, right? So that's a paradigm shift. Now, how complicated is it? It's not really complicated. It is stuff that you are already doing, perhaps, that's taking a lot more collaboration than it needs to. These are areas where Zycus can immediately impact through this strategic integration with OpenAI to facilitate, to use generative artificial intelligence as a facilitator for something that is quite easy and needs to be obvious, right? Vikas, any take on this?
There is a reason why we say this is a transformative experience from a business user standpoint. Normally, any procure-to-pay application you would experience, right? You are trained to go, you search for an item. If you do not get this item or service, you go to create a non-catalog item. You have to choose a category, you have to choose a supplier, and there's no way in which you can enforce those procurement policies. So here, as a business user, I don't have to do anything of that. All I need to know is what I need to buy. And the system automatically guides it through the entire procurement process and takes them to the right buying channel. And this is a complete self-service tool, right? And there's no dependence on the procurement users. Even the procurement users are rid of going through those requests. So this is absolutely win-win situation for everyone. So what we have shown right now is, from a business user standpoint, how we are reducing the whole friction of managing their own task without even going into the system, whether they want to track a requisition, whether they want to approve a purchase orders, contracts, or whether they want to collaborate with suppliers or internal users. Any and every of the task is able to be done to this Merlin Assist. But what about the hardcore procurement users? How does generative AI help them in their day-to-day activities? That is what we are going to follow next.
Yeah, a good place to start, the burdens of a hardcore professional who's trying to manage enterprise risk, ensuring compliance. I think a good place to start with would be, I'm still trying to figure out who came up with the name Quest Genie. After I read it, it kind of occurred to me, it's just question Genie, questions creator. It kind of made sense. I'll walk you through what it is. I saw there was a lot of unbridled enthusiasm from the audience that were congregating over that corner regarding this. So this made a lot more sense to me, even as a solutions consultant, when our product managers, hey, this is something you guys, Zycus, get really enthusiastic about. Because a lot of customers we're working with, they have to ensure mitigated risks within the enterprise. Oftentimes, they don't know where to start. It's not that they don't know, it's just that too many steps to follow. Okay, well, there's artificial intelligence. Everybody's talking about it. There's tremendous amount of sensitivity about it. There's politics in it. The European Union passed a law with some regulations around AI. Now, how do I, as a procurement or a risk professional within my enterprise, ensure that the thousands of suppliers that I work with are risk mitigated, especially on the topic of AI? Now, how do I know the vendor that I have sufficient amount of protections on the subject of artificial intelligence, right? So one way to really get things going or get things started is through this fantastic solution, Quest Genie, right? I still have to thank my marketing team for coming up with this. Now, you just insert your criteria or conditions on what you need. Hey, do you want questions or templates or survey questions for AI risk assessment or operational risk assessment or financial risk assessment for a particular geography, for a particular location, right? And does it have to contain specific things like OSHA compliance and things like that? You specifically put that information into the system, and Quest Genie will automatically create a template of questions that are relevant, right? And this works real time. And yesterday we were walking the group through this, And it'll, in this particular example of Financial Risk 2023, it came up with a list of questions that you can immediately insert into your risk assessment surveys and launch it to all the vendors, right? Now, how does it really work, right? So here you can have financial risk 4.0, for example, and there's just a quick real-time walkthrough of any of the topics that you want to look at. Create now. The KI is created, and then all you have to do is create the questions, and AI generated questions are now getting built up. This is real time, and it'll furnish all the questions based on the prompts that you inserted through the description that I gave. And of course, we'll be happy to walk you through dedicated one-on-one sessions to play around with this a little bit more. Trust me, my experience is the same thing. I just go into the product and play with a bunch of scenarios, and eventually in this particular case, the system will give me the questions that you want to include in that AI survey or risk survey, financial assessment survey, or whatever the case might be. And on the right-hand side, you have a list of relevant questions for the prompts that you provided to the system, along with the sources that's out there. And of course, there's a process where you vet some of the things that generative artificial intelligence is provided to you that needs to fit into your company's specific goal sets. But it's already there. It's not a task that should take you 2 weeks to figure out what survey questions you want to publish or issue to the thousands of vendors. It got you started within minutes, right? And so that's an example of risk assessment using generative artificial intelligence. We're not stopping there, right? Because you want to add anything?
No, I think one of the things that customers loved about this question is the ability to stay current, right? And there's so many regulations and laws keep on getting introduced across the various geographies. So it's difficult for someone to be current with all of those. By using this questionnaire, now you are able to get the best or the most latest question that you would ever ask to your supplier. So apart from, of course, the speed at which you get all of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, on this there's a lot of different apps, right? And another app, I kind of made a rank order of things that brought a lot of excitement to some of the people who were interacting with us today. Another area from a risk mitigation perspective, cost reduction perspective, is supplier recommendations. Now, what do we really mean by that? Now, Zycus is in a rather advantageous position, right? Oftentimes when customers tackle spend management and source-to-pay problems with Zycus, we already have access to your purchasing transactional purchasing data, your POs and invoices. We know which suppliers you're working with, who are your high-quality vendors, which are your limited risk suppliers, where do you have the strongest relationships, et cetera, et cetera. Now, all that data is getting continuously analyzed with our AI engines, right? Now, how does that ultimately benefit or manifest in some sort of advantage for you as an organization is really the question, right? For example, the conversation was around, look, we really want to understand all the items that are single sourced, but we could benefit from sourcing it from multiple suppliers or multiple parties, right? Now, what if that one single source vendor for a high cost item goes out of business? That is a problem, right? And especially if it's on the direct side, but sometimes it could also be true on the indirect side, depending on the scenario. Now, rather than having you go through a bunch of Excel spreadsheets and files and contractual documents and who was a good performing supplier, we've reduced that journey. We've shrunk it, we've quashed that through the supplier recommendation app, where the system, give me 1 second, let me just close the right opportunity here, where the system looks at all your single sourced items. Here, for example, the specific type of valve with over $2 million or something here in spend, but that's a big risk. The current vendor is Schlumberger, but upon further analysis using artificial intelligence, the system is now also showing you alternate sources that you could tap into. And it kind of goes about this in a rather interesting and intelligent way based on all the criteria that I just laid out. It rank orders them. It gives all the alternate sources some sort of scoring. Now you may be wondering, where is the scoring coming from? We get asked this question all the time. Hey, how does Zycus predict this is the best alternative or the second best supplier to buy that particular type of pump or valve or a widget or a service, right? Now it first looks into your own database of vendors you're doing transactions with already, have some sort of contracts with, but you've not maximized the potential of such and such contract or the relationship with that particular vendor, right? So it'll tell you, hey, Flowserve, you have a lot of other transactions. They are in a good payment term. They are in this particular region. I think you should consider Flowserve for this particular type of valve or part number. They get a score of 10 on 10. Similarly, there are other parameters. Their latest supplier performance scores also taken into consideration, and then it shows you whether you need to consider them. The second layer of recommendations will also come from, hey, perhaps you do not have the best alternate supplier for this particular item within your network, but should we tap into the wider Zycus network of vendors that you could potentially buy this from? Zycus also rank orders any other vendors within our network and provides that as a recommendation. And lastly, it goes one step further, search the universe, right? So advanced supplier discovery, that will also rank order highly rated vendors that'll help you with that type of purchase there.
So one thing about the generative AI in those alternate supplier, and this is not something that new that we as Zycus is doing. It has been there as a practice. But what differentiates is, of course, the ability to scout the universe and get the suppliers. But it's very importantly, people used to get very frustrated. Hey, you're suggesting me Flowserve, but Flowserve never does that. It is at a category level. So most of the times the hit was at a category level, not at really service level. If I really want, for example, a blue pen or a roller blue pen, it will give you exact. These are the other suppliers who gives you a roller ballpoint pen, and never really does at a category level. So it understands the item description or the purchasing transaction that has happened and give you the closest match of that. So that's again the magic of generative AI in generating those recommendations.
Great. Another, on that note, because one other area that we constantly hear as an area of interest is around auto score generation, right? So what it is I think Richard here can talk extensively about it for days. As much as we would like to believe this is now, everybody uses ERFX technology and solutions for sourcing goods and services, auctions are a commonplace. It's quite shocking to us, even now, when we talk to several organizations like yours, that they've never used a sourcing technology. Okay, don't you want the best price? Don't you want the best terms? Don't you want to have some sort of healthy competition between your vendors? How do you do that? Word documents, emails, Excel spreadsheets, phone calls. It's rather shocking. Why is that? E-sourcing as technology has been around the block for a very long time. The reason is worry about, will it get really adopted? How do we truly evaluate on suppliers for all the qualitative things that we need to evaluate them for? There's a level of inhibition about it. There's a level of resistance to doing that. Okay, how can we solve that using generative artificial intelligence? Right. One thing, we can help you build, just like QuestGenie develops questions for risk assessment, we have AI for RFX questionnaire building. Right? You put your categories that you want to source, build a bid document for, and it'll give you the questions that you can immediately launch and get the responses from your vendors. You use obviously advanced supplier discovery for the vendors that you want to invite to participate on the bid so that the vendors can go into a portal, provide their responses. Similarly, what happens after the vendors have submitted their responses, right? So use AI to evaluate and study the responses received from vendors, right? To go ahead and provide the scores as well. So we have score sheets that will where GenAI will study all of the responses, the qualitative ones especially, where you kind of sort of will need a critical eye to evaluate, but then AI will take a first pass and read through extensive text responses provided by the vendor and automatically give it a score of 90 on 100, right? Or 70 out of 100. So once again, we're saving you a tremendous amount of time. Of course, you will also look at the actual responses, but then where it truly benefits is, assume a scenario where you've invited 10 different vendors. Every vendor is giving you different flavors of responses. This analysis, the system has already analyzed, at least it will provide you comparative analysis. Hey, this particular vendor has high FICO score. If you're looking at the financial assessment as part of an RFP package, whereas this vendor has less, so they have a higher score, etc., etc. It has done the heavy lifting upfront for you, so that you have to simply go ahead and negotiate a better deal, bring the cost down even further, perhaps launch another round of reverse auctions or things like that. So again, we're eliminating any kind of sort of friction that's inherent to this process with the help of automated scoring.